If you're going through a divorce or even thinking about one, this episode could change everything. Because today's guest isn't just an attorney, she's the one other attorney call when a case is too complex, too high conflict, and too important to get wrong. After 30 years in family law, she's been what's actually works. She's seen what's actually works, what destroys families, and the one mistake almost everyone makes before it's too late. Welcome back. Welcome to Divorcing Strong, the podcast that pulls no punches when it comes to divorce. I'm Becky Sampson, better known as Bulldog Becky Brockovich, and I'm here to give you the straight talk, the strategies, and the subpoena secrets you won't hear anywhere else. With expert guests and proven advice, you'll learn your rights, your options, and gain your power that encourages a fair and equitable outcome. Divorce doesn't have to break you. It can build you. Let's get to it. Well, welcome everybody to another episode of the Divorcing Strong podcast. Becky Sampson. I'm Becky Sampson, the host of this show. And this is our third show for the day. So third is the best, right? I just want to thank publicly our guest because she has got a lot of experience in this space of the family law. And it's always wonderful to be able to have someone with her kind of experience to come on and to share what she knows, what works, what doesn't work. Divorce can be very, very complex. And especially when you're dealing with high conflict and you're dealing with all the different aspects that is. And we're going to talk about how the legal system can and will be difficult. If you have a difficult personality, they could abuse you through that, which is what I experienced myself. So I'm interested to see where this show goes. Want to go ahead and give you the introduction. Is on today's episode of Divorcing Strong, my guest Jackie Harounian is the managing partner at Wisselman Harounian Family Law, and one of the few divorce attorneys who has practiced before the United States Supreme Court, or been admitted, I should say, admitted to the Supreme Court. She started as an unpaid intern, spent the next 30 years rising to lead one of New York's most respected family law firms. Today, she's known for handling complex, high-conflict divorce and custody cases with a rare combination of legal strategy and psychological insight. In this episode, she breaks down the number one mistake people make in the first 30 days of divorce, why even top trial attorneys say that the courtroom is often your worst option, and what actually wins in custody battles versus what can quietly destroy your case, the financial mistakes even attorneys miss, and what to do in the first 48 hours if you're facing domestic violence. So this is the kind of insight that you can only get from someone who's seen it all at every level. So welcome to the show, Jackie.
Thank you so much for having me. That was a great introduction. And yes, I guess having been doing this for a very long time, it means I have some years on me, but I've been doing this for more than 30 years. Every type of divorce matter, in court and out of court, mediation, through litigation and appeals. And yes, I can say I have seen it all.
I know. And so first of all, thank you for doing what you do. I know how stressful it can be for attorneys, especially divorce attorneys that have been through the gamut, because you know what works and what doesn't work, and you're dealing with immature people that don't. I should say amateurs when it comes to divorce. And so sometimes we have a lot of questions and we don't understand the whole legal system. So thank you. And I also read in a lot of your information too, that you've got a background in psychological or psychology, is it?
Yeah, I have a graduate degree in psychology, and I don't think it's a secret. Family law, divorce law is very messy, and a lot of it has to do with emotions that are just completely out of control. And
Yes.
Many cases have infidelity. Other cases have financial infidelity, hidden money. And all of that can bring out very powerful emotions because when a marriage breaks up, especially a long marriage, it stirs up a lot of feelings of betrayal and trust. And all of that goes into the divorce process and trying to get a fair outcome.
Absolutely. Well, before we dive really into a lot of the subjects that we brought up in the intro, tell everybody kind of the backstory of what got you into divorce, into this space, because you started as an unpaid intern, right?
I did.
Yeah.
My first job out of law school was at a very small firm, only one lawyer, a mile or two away from my house. And I was already a mom when I went to law school. I was a very young mom. I got married when I was 20 and somehow had the idea that I needed to continue my education. And I lucked out because my husband was very supportive. So my first job, and oftentimes your first job is what you end up doing. It turned out that I really bonded with family law. It was instantly relatable to me. I really enjoy the relationship aspect of it, trying to unpack what went right, what went wrong. I really relate to the parenting issues. I'm a mom of four, and the financial issues and all the different layers and complexities of businesses and taxes and bonuses and money and crypto, all of it. I mean, money is endlessly fascinating and complicated, and people that go through divorce are often very motivated to hide money.
Do you like the complexity? It sounds like you like the complexity of divorce or family law because there's so many aspects to it, but it's similar but different every case.
Yeah, what I like about my work is that every case is unique, and some cases get resolved very, very quickly, especially when I'm a mediator. I can resolve easy cases quickly, and that's very satisfying. But also, I have cases that are new and different, and like I said, unique in its own way. And those cases can take years to reach a final resolution, either by settlement or after a trial. I do handle trials, and those cases are super interesting. So it's nice to have a diversity of cases in my practice, and we have a larger firm. We have 11 attorneys here. We have every type of case, from the most simple to the most complex. We have clients that are indigent, and we handle several pro bono free cases for parties that cannot afford it. And we have clients that are super wealthy, and those have their own challenges. Every case has its own challenges.
What would you say was your favorite kind of case? I mean, what lights you up?
Yeah. I had a case, believe it or not, that I resolved today. It did have some mental health aspects to it. Um, because there's guardianship, and in New York, you can actually have family members or neutral parties appointed by the court to manage the money for a person who needs help after their divorce. And we had a case that was very complicated, a father who had mental health issues, and we were able to fully resolve it with the help of his sister and mother and his ex-wife. We were able to reach an agreement after 2 years of a complex case with complex assets, and everyone was very satisfied for the way it was resolved. And most importantly for me, my client, who has some challenges and really doesn't have full ability to appreciate everything, was told us that he was very happy with the outcome and thought it was fair. And that means a lot. It means a lot for my clients to walk out feeling like they got the best possible outcome.
Yeah, I always say on this show, Jackie, that I truly believe that we need to advocate for our fair and equitable division, not going for the jugular, not trying to get more than what's fair, but really to know what our rights are so that we know how to advocate. Not necessarily fight, but it feels like a fight sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that you're called Becky the Bulldog. I should steal that. That's a great, when people go through divorce, they feel very vulnerable.
Yeah.
They feel like they need someone powerful by their side because they need that strength because they themselves feel a little bit vulnerable. And the truth is, you do have to be a strong advocate for your client. You have to do everything you can and not just take the other side's word for it when they say there are assets or the value of assets. You have to do your job, and you have to be a zealous advocate. But in the end, the goal is to have a fair agreement, because the unknown truth is that very few cases actually go to trial. The judicial system in this country, even at the US Supreme Court, where I've been a couple of times, it's not set up to hear every case at a trial. It's set up so that only a few, 2 or 3% of cases actually go to trial and get a trial verdict or decision.
Yeah,
So
that's one of the statistics we talk about is 97% of, I mean, I can't tell you how many people are like, no, Becky, it's going for trial. It's going for trial. It's going for trial. And I'm like, even mine settled the day of trial. Right. So it's like
settle at the 11th hour. Honestly, that's not the best feeling for clients. They don't like settling in the hallway of the courthouse, but sometimes it has to get to that point. So a lawyer that really cares about their client is educating them all the way along. This is what you're likely going to get by settlement. And I'm willing to go fight for you up until the day of trial. But just so you know, this is likely the way it's going to play out. So your client should never feel blindsided or unprepared. Our job is to psychologically prepare our clients for the outcome that they're most likely to get.
Yeah. So talk about you mentioned before we started the podcast, and even right at the beginning, you talked about how people are financially abused through the
Yeah,
legal system.
yeah. So, it's a feature of marriages, especially longer marriages, and I would say especially where there's one party that's in the dark about the finances.
Right.
And there could be various reasons. It could be, an older couple. It could be a cultural issue. In some cultures, only the man handles the money. It could be that the wife is, and I'm talking about gender stereotypes in a way, but it's almost always the man, the husband, that is in control of the income and the assets, and the wife that's more preoccupied with
Mhm.
domestic obligations and the children. And some families work very well that way. And there's not to say that this is the wrong way, but there are risks for the wife. There are risks for the non-moneyed spouse, especially if there are domestic violence aspects to the relationship. If she is fearful of her spouse, if she's not allowed to talk about money or spend money. I've met countless women during my career that get an allowance, that are really don't have a seat at the table when it comes to any financial issues. That is a form of financial control, and experts recognize this as a form of domestic violence.
Yes.
And sometimes it's extreme, and it can be humiliating to a woman who's not allowed to make financial decisions, who has to beg or provide sexual favors to her husband in order to buy a new dress, or makes basic decisions that other women who are more empowered get to make. So I don't want to put a judgment call. Like I said, in some
No,
you
it's
know,
real.
in some cultures and traditions, it's very
Mhm.
normal and accepted. Certainly, you can have a young woman married to an older man with a prenup. There's a certain level of financial control in those types of relationships too. But it should come from a place of, I know what I'm getting into, I know what my options are, and I feel okay and empowered by this relationship. If you're feeling diminished, if you're feeling humiliated or controlled, if you're fearful of your spouse, then that is the type of case when it comes to my office, and I get a lot of these cases. I have a special responsibility to screen that case, to make sure that my client is going to get the representation they need. So it's not going to be, some women come to me and they tell me, yeah, my husband handles the finances, but I've looked at the tax returns. I know where the money is. I represent women that say they pay all the bills. They know exactly where all the money is. And then I represent women that say, I have never seen a tax return. I have no idea what is going on with our finances. And those are the cases that are going to cost much more and are going to require much more aggressive litigation strategies, including subpoenas and other litigation techniques, because a woman like that is so in the dark. She's so behind the eight ball when it comes to knowing what's going on, that it's going to be the lawyer's responsibility to find the money and explain to the client that hopefully we found the money and here it is and everything looks okay, and hopefully you're going to get your share. The worst case scenarios, Becky, are the ones where we cannot find the money and all that's left is debt, or assets have been transferred to family members, or
Yep.
overseas. Those are very difficult cases.
So
And
do you work with forensics accountants?
absolutely. And that's, again, those are very big ticket cases.
Mhm.
Forensic accountants almost always are used. And I had a meeting with one today on a case where there's either a business involved, there's a marital property that's a business, or there's an issue trying to trace money. And usually we start with tax returns and then subpoena bank records. We need to find and trace money that isn't where it should be. And forensic accounts are expensive. Oftentimes they're appointed by the court on a neutral basis, and the husband will pay that if he's the moneyed spouse, or he'll pay most of it. Other times the wife is going to have to engage her own expert, and it's not cheap and it's
So
not easy, but it sometimes is very necessary.
yeah, so being in the business where obviously I do subpoenas, right, for attorneys. Why do you think more attorneys don't use subpoenas as a strategy in getting through, especially when they're dealing with high conflict
Yeah,
divorces?
yeah. That's a very good question, because in our office, we utilize subpoenas fairly early in the process, because otherwise there can be a lot of pointing and blaming between the attorneys. I asked
Mhm.
you for these documents, the court order says you're supposed to provide them, and then you go back and forth, and it's not productive.
Mm-mm.
If you can serve a subpoena I mean, again, it's not necessarily the first thing you do in a case, but if you're
Right.
getting resistance or delays in a case, the strongest thing you can do for your client is take the tax returns, serve subpoenas, because not only do the subpoenaed records now, they come back, fairly quickly
Yep.
because of the technology that's out there. It's not difficult to get these subpoena responses. You get them, you're required to share it with the other side in the state of New York. Now everybody has the documents, and you can actually save quite a bit of money, um, compared to going back and forth to court and telling the judge, we asked for documents, they weren't provided. And again, the whole blaming, sorry, let me close the window, that whole blaming dynamic. Subpoenas can actually save quite a bit of money, in my opinion.
I know. I honestly, Jackie, it's baffling to me when someone calls me on a case where they've been in court for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and the subpoenas haven't been done.
Yeah.
Or I'm like, because I know in
Yeah.
my case, I wasted 8 months going back
Yeah.
and forth with discovery, then, hey, motion to compel, and then
Right.
discovery. And
Exactly.
finally, once I figured out how to do a subpoena, I was like, what? Why would anyone not do this?
Yeah.
Because within a
Yeah,
couple of weeks, I could
those
get it in.
motions cost a fortune, and clients need to be their own advocate. They need to
Right.
understand, first of all, subpoenas almost always are prepared by paralegals.
Mhm.
They're not expensive, and some of these law firms unfortunately don't have enough staff to really have a
Yep.
discovery strategy that is necessary. So subpoenas, I can have a paralegal prepare 10 of them. Obviously, I have to review them, I have to sign them, they have to be served. There are some costs involved, but it's a fraction of a cost of a motion, and going back
Exactly.
and forth and blaming the other lawyer and playing games
Amen.
like that. Yeah,
Amen,
subpoenas
sister.
they're cost effective. They're cost effective.
I just sit there and just shake my head and just go, my goodness, you know what, going back and doing motions and motions and motions, how much money are you wasting in attorney fees going and being in front of the court for them just to say, yeah, turn them over, and they don't. So it is very frustrating to see them not used more, for sure. So what would you say too for people that, I mean, what do you think is one of the biggest mistakes that people, both men and women, because I do know that women typically are the ones that are disadvantaged, although I have a husband that was left with very little money after many, my husband now. So it does happen to men too. But what
Right.
do you think the biggest mistakes that, especially when you're dealing with a high conflict
Yeah.
divorce, what
Yeah.
mistakes do they make?
I mean, I think people, sometimes women especially, are a little bit too passive when dealing with their attorneys.
Mhm.
They're assuming they've hired the person that's the best for the job. They're getting the bills. They see the work that's getting done. But I think they should have more of they should have more engagement with their lawyers, asking their lawyers, what documents have you obtained? Is there going to be a settlement meeting? I mean, what do you recommend as a settlement? Can we now engage with the other side? Do we need to, they need to be more involved. You can't take a role that's too passive and then blame the lawyer when you don't get the outcome you want. Your lawyer should have a strategy. There should be some predictive ability by the lawyer in terms of percentages for support, or percentages of a business, or a home. Once you have the documents, and again, with subpoenas or other discovery and pushing the discovery, there's no excuse for not having the documents.
Mhm.
Once you have them, you need to sit down with your attorney and say, we have the documents, now I want answers. What do you expect me to get, and can we now resolve the case? I see a lot of clients that sometimes blame their attorneys, and some of the attorneys deserve some blame. They're all busy. They're not necessarily focused on only one case. But if you request from your attorney, I want a strategy session, I want to sit down, I want to know what is going on in my case, it can really, really clear the air and get you on the same page as your attorney, and reduce a lot of the frustrations that clients have when they have complicated cases.
Yeah, I actually just got a call yesterday. I think it was yesterday or the day before, from somebody I had never talked to before, and she just called for a consult. And she has an attorney. Her case is what, 4 months in, 4 or 5 months in, and $45,000. And I said, so do you have do you know what he's done for that? She goes, no, I don't know. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like
That's
that.
not okay.
I love that you brought that up, is that you need to be an active participant in working with your attorney,
Right.
as a partnership to getting it through the line. And I do think that if they've been passive in their marriage, they're going to be passive with their attorney.
Yeah.
And that's you. And like my mom said, when I was going through my divorce, she's like, Becky, pull your big girl panties up. It's time to get to business.
It really is. And ultimately, no one's coming to save you in your
Mhm.
divorce. No one is coming to save you. You have to save yourself. This is your life. You have to be strategic. You have to tell your client. I often tell my clients, what is your wish list? What is it
Mhm.
that you want? And from the very beginning, I'm here to educate them about what's realistic and what isn't. And they have to prioritize what is the most important outcome for you. If it is critical for you to keep the house, and a lot of women with good reason want to
Right.
keep their home, then what concessions are you willing to make on other things? You
Mhm.
can't expect that everything is going to go your way. And a lot of people seem to think that if you pay a lot of money to a lawyer, you're going to get the best outcome. And that's not true. There's no real direct correlation between who you hire and the money you pay and the outcome. It really comes down to strategy and being very clear in what you're looking for and being realistic. Being realistic. Otherwise, your lawyer is going to make a lot of money on your case, and you have no one to blame but yourself. And that's
Yeah.
really the truth. It's
So,
caveat emptor.
so you've said that that a negotiation settlement is almost always the best strategy, especially when children are involved. But I know women watching this whose ex is a narcissist, or they think, that's thrown around a lot, right? Or they're a bully or someone who weaponizes the court system. When does negotiation stop being the answer, and when do you go to war?
Negotiated settlements happen between attorneys, most likely. It's not going to happen between the parties. So if there's a dynamic of intimidation and control, then your attorney needs to advocate for you.
Mhm.
Negotiated settlements are how, over 90% of cases are resolved. Like we said before, only 3 or 4% go to trial.
Mhm.
In New York, maybe 10% are involved in mediation. That means most cases are being resolved with attorneys involved. Mediation rates are actually going up, and that's a very good thing because more people should consider mediation. When should you go to court? When do you ask for an emergency order? First of all, you do it if there's a safety issue. If you or
Mhm.
your children are in harm's way, you need to go to court and get an order to protect yourself and the children, right? That's really, safety is number one. But when it comes to financial issues, if you have one party who's controlling all the income and who's borrowing money from their 401k in violation of court orders, or they're refusing to pay the mortgage, they're wasting an asset, they're refusing to pay the car loan, and the car is about to be repossessed, then your lawyer has a responsibility to get you in front of a judge. And so those are emergency situations I just described. But sometimes it's not an emergency, it's just an impasse. You've paid money to your lawyer, you're not getting anywhere, and it's time to involve a judge. And involving a judge in New York, filing a notice to get a judge, does not mean your case is necessarily going to cost more. It just means somebody else is calling the shots. And sometimes you need that dynamic because if you're dealing with a narcissist or someone who's unreasonable, you're not going to get very far. At some point, that person needs to answer to a higher authority. And the higher
Exactly.
authority is the judge. They're not listening to their lawyer. A status quo is developing that's in their favor. In a worst case scenario, they're stealing the money, they're taking the money, and your client's being harmed. So you have to go to court, and you shouldn't be afraid to.
Yeah, and I
You
think
do
that
what you have to do.
do you find that women? This is not stereotypical. I'm just saying most women, maybe that if they have not been involved with the finances, tend to not be as assertive in get like if something isn't getting paid or if their mortgage is not getting paid, and don't take advantage of saying to their attorney, hey, we need to do an emergency, let's get in front of the judge. They don't advocate, and so then it gets worse and worse and worse instead of
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, I would say a lot of women aren't assertive. They're afraid of going to court, which was with good reason. You have to
Mhm.
do it strategically. They're afraid to anger their spouse. They don't want to lose control of the
Yeah.
case, but you can't be naive about it. And it's your attorney's job to offer that option to you. If being out of court is not serving the client, then going to court is at least going to change the dynamic. And sometimes you don't need to do it with a motion or an emergency application. You just file to get a court date. Again, it's not very expensive. It just means in New York, if you file to get a court date in Nassau County, you're going to get a court date within a few weeks. Again, it changes the dynamic. There's compulsory financial disclosure. There's going to be a financial affidavit that's sworn to, a statement of net worth. These are not necessarily things you can get outside of court. they're going to be required by the judge. So again, it's going to, as an attorney, give you a little bit more clarity and an ability to tell your client, now we have a financial affidavit. We know what the assets are. We have orders regarding discovery. We can now serve subpoenas. And now within a few months, you should have the information you need to settle the case, with some exceptions. Obviously, if there's a business, if there's more complex assets. But even in those cases, you have enough to move forward with settlement discussions possibly.
Yeah, I was going to say, what do you find slows down the process the most?
I mean, I think the number one thing I see that slows down the process are attorneys that are not interacting with one another in between
Yeah,
court dates. I see
I
that
agree.
all the time. They have a court date in January, the next court date is in March, and between January and March, they have done nothing on the case. They haven't reviewed documents, they haven't met with their client, they haven't prepared their client or explained to the client what to expect. And so you show up in court again and nothing gets done. And of
Mhm.
course, the clients get upset. They get upset at their lawyers with very good reason. So there needs to be engagement between the attorney and the client. Some conversations maybe with the party's accountant, review of records, some analysis of the issues. It's not that difficult. And again, some of this paralegals can do. They can help the attorneys do their jobs, but you have to do calculations of support. You have to look at tax returns and tell your client, this is what I think you're going to get. This or within this range. And lawyers that educate their clients are actually preparing their clients to accept reality and at some point settle their case. That's what we're all tasked with doing. Attorneys that do nothing in between, I don't want to call out attorneys, they're busy, whatever it is, but they do slow down cases. Unfortunately, it increases the cost for the clients.
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, there's a happy medium, right? Because even though I had a really great attorney at one point in my divorce, I still was very respectful of his time. And I was very grateful. I was always telling him, thank you so much for doing everything that you're doing for me. Even though there were some times where he would do stuff and I was like, what? But he was a really good attorney. And we needed to have that relationship of trust to
Yeah,
knowing that he had my back and
yeah,
that, he could give me some pushback at times and go, Becky, trust me. I'm like, okay.
right.
But it was a really important relationship. And he was open to my questions. He was open to me investigating. He was open to me, going and researching on my own and coming back and saying, what about this? What about that? I'm thinking about this. So it really is a relationship, just giving your stuff over and expecting
Yeah,
them to do everything when they've got
right,
multiple cases.
right.
You know your case the best, not the attorney.
That's right.
And
That's right.
it just is, if you didn't advocate for yourself in the marriage, you need to advocate, or else there's a really good chance that you won't get the fair and equitable division.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So one of the things I think was a little bit unusual about your firm, do you guys actually have a licensed social worker on staff?
Yes, we do. We
Talk
do.
a little bit about that.
We have a mental health approach to our cases.
I
So
love that.
we do an assessment, and because I do a lot of work with victims of domestic violence, who are sometimes very affluent women and sometimes men, and I have to screen for those issues from the very, very beginning. So
Mhm.
from the outset of the case, we are screening to see, does our client need a therapist? Do I need to refer them to a support group? Sometimes the parties want a marriage counselor, and so we are
Mhm.
asking our social worker to find names for marriage counselors as a suggestion, or addiction specialists.
Mhm.
And I'm very, very encouraging of parties that aren't necessarily ready to get divorced, but maybe want a legal separation because they really want to improve certain things that are going on in the marriage. A lot of times it's mental health issues or substance abuse issues. So having that mental health approach, involving social workers, therapists, recommending, because truly a lot of answers are not going to be found in the courtroom. And there's only so much judges can do. And in New York, the judges are very, very encouraging of mediation and therapy and anything that builds trust and improves communication between people that are very angry and unrealistic, because those are the cases that last the longest.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing that. Out of all the attorneys, and I've interviewed a lot of attorneys on this platform or in this Divorcing Strong, and there was only one other one that does similar to that. And because you see the value that it is more of a holistic thing, because the more they get the help in that emotional realm, they're better able to communicate with you instead of always getting stuck in the stories and the trauma.
No, I agree. I'm a very expensive therapist. At my hourly rate, and I tell clients that you are not going to want to contact me because some of them want to just hear my voice. They will tell me, Jackie, I just want to hear your voice. I just want to text you and get your response. And of course, I'm willing to do that for any client, but to become their primary source of support and emotional support, it really is, it's not affordable. And that's not my best use. And I always say people that have a loving sibling or best friend, or write in a journal, or do yoga, anything you can do to find coping mechanisms and get these feelings out, they're going to have an easier case because the feelings have to go somewhere. And the beginning of every case, it is a roller coaster. Yeah. And it's very powerful feelings that have to be dealt with. And in most cases, I would say 80 to 90% of the time, a few months in, people are really in a very rational place. So there's 10 to 20% that are never going to get there. They need professional help and they want to keep fighting. But, I would say 80 to 90% of people are very receptive to realistic advice and outcomes and are ready to focus on it. So we always want to get them there.
Well, I appreciate that because I wish there was more acceptance of that in this space, because sometimes people, they're given a referral to an attorney and then they just kind of turn it over and then they don't know where else to go. Right. So having an attorney be able to provide that or give references to other people that can support is really valuable. Very valuable. So what would you say, kind of like wrapping up, like what would be some things that we haven't talked about that maybe you would want to give advice to someone that's going through divorce, starting it or in the middle of it?
Yeah, I would say that there's no substitute for being prepared, which means everyone has a responsibility to organize their own financial documents, write out their monthly budget, see where their money is going. It's just a very good exercise for anyone to do, even if they're not going through a divorce. You have to be in control of your money and you have to know where your assets are. So pay attention when things come in the mail. When you're looking at your tax return, you see account numbers, you see bank statements, you overhear something, you see something, keep a notebook, write everything down and try to gather the information, because that's going to be very valuable for your attorney. If you're just going to tell your attorney and helpless, like, I don't know where the money is, my husband took it all, over to you, you are going to be in a situation where you're billed a lot of money because you're literally telling your attorney, figure it all out for me. The clients that come to me with a one-page cheat sheet of all their assets, their debts, their income numbers, their monthly budget, I find that very impressive. And I can tell those are people that have worked with coaches or are really prepared for their divorce. That one-page cheat sheet will probably save them thousands of dollars. And ideally, people will become more empowered about their finances, because divorce is really a reset. It's a chance to start over. And for women, we've said a lot about how women sometimes are undermined, but actually, I've been doing a lot of speaking engagements about women who are becoming breadwinners. There are quite a lot of women these days. I think up to 40% of women earn the same or more than their spouse. And those are women that are a little bit more in control of their money. And that's a very good thing. So it's not to say that it's all gender-based. There are a lot of women that are paying child support and paying spousal support. And those women, we can learn from them. They are protecting their money. And ultimately, everyone needs to.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with that. I think one of the things that made all the difference in me is that I learned to become a master documenter. Yeah. And I learned to put everything in one place, because you can get scattered very easily. So if you have one place that you can land it and make sure it's a safe place, whether you've separated or not, and then when you go to the attorney, it just makes it so much. I remember in one of our hearings, my attorney turned to me and he's like, Becky, because I was in a different state at that time. And he says, where's this one piece of paper? I said, do you remember that orange binder behind the second tab? And he's like, Oh, yes. You know, but that's just because I learned early on documenting everything was my friend. It was a lot of
Yeah.
work,
Yeah.
but it definitely made a difference for everybody involved, including myself and the
Yeah.
judge and the attorneys.
Yeah, and it saves you a lot of money. And ultimately, the point of view for New York, for judges in New York, is you are responsible for the marriage you had in terms of
Yes,
finances. If you took a passive role, if you looked the other way while your husband paid for things in cash and reported no income on the tax return, if you let him gamble or take debts and then stayed married and look the other way, the court system is not going to come and save you from
exactly.
those realities. You have to take a stance while you are married and otherwise suffer the outcome when the money is gone. So it's not like sometimes we could serve all the subpoenas in the world and the money is gone. It was spent. There were loans that were repaid. There were credit card bills, and it's sometimes very hard for women to accept that they didn't necessarily direct those financial decisions, but they benefited from them or didn't do anything to change course.
Hmm.
And in those situations, they are stuck with those outcomes, unfortunately. So being proactive, being organized, having your information available to you and reviewing it as you go along in marriage, I would say that's my number one advice for anyone, male or female. Be
Yeah.
an active participant.
Yeah, I love it. And you probably already answered my last question. First of all, I want to say thank you so much, Jackie, for being willing to take time out of your busy schedule to come on and share your wisdom with people, because it really does matter.
My
And
pleasure.
I really I do honor the work that you do, because I know how stressful of a space it is, and we need good attorneys out there to advocate for us as
Thank you
well.
very
So,
much. I appreciate your kind words. Thank you
yeah.
very much, Becky.
So here's my last question, and you may have a different answer to it or not, but what does
Okay.
divorcing strong mean to you?
I think divorcing strong means ultimately reaching a point where you feel confident in your future and you're willing to accept your own role in the divorce, in the finances of your marriage, getting to a point where you're not angry and blaming, but feeling empowered and feeling ready to face your next chapter. Um, I've met men that have no money in the bank and very little to give them confidence about their future, yet they have a mindset that is a positive one. And I've met people, on the other hand, that have millions of dollars. They literally have nothing to worry about, and yet they don't have that feeling of strength. So divorcing strong is really a mindset, which I think that can be developed, and surrounding yourself by advisors, experts, lawyers that are going to keep you, remind you of that positive mindset. It really makes a very big difference.
Yeah, I love it. And it is what I found through my own personal divorce as well, is can we do it in a way that we can come out stronger on the other end? And
Yeah,
that is the most important thing, because
yeah,
now you got a whole life ahead of you that you get to create.
that's right. That's
So,
right.
yeah.
That's
So,
exactly right. You get to reset and rebuild the life that you want.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today, and thank
My
you.
pleasure.
And actually, if you want, and you're in the New York area, let me make sure I put your information out there. If you want to reach out to her, it's lawjaw.com. And you can reach out in New York, right? You don't practice
Right.
anywhere else.
I don't practice anywhere but New York, and I'm downstate New York City and Long Island mostly, Westchester, and I do offer a free consultation. I would be happy to meet with anyone who thinks I can help them with a New York case.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jackie.
Pleasure.
And hold on just one second. All right, everybody. Oh my goodness. I could be literally talk to Jackie all day, because she's got so much information, and she is a speaker, and she's also an author. I don't think we talked about that. So, but actually definitely reach out to her. If you're in the New York area, or you need some, a free consultation, definitely it's important. And all of her information is there in the show notes. So today, I'm so grateful that you joined us, and make sure that you join us on all of the audio platforms. We are definitely releasing 3 different episodes every week. And then on YouTube, every single episode is live. So you can go and check those when they come out. We appreciate your support. And obviously, if you know someone that is going through a divorce, I find that most people have someone that they know going through a divorce that ends up sending them the information to listen. So, but thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening to the Divorcing Strong podcast. This episode is sponsored by Only Subpoenas, where we make subpoenas simple, powerful, and 100% compliant. If you're having a hard time getting the information you need to settle for a fair and equitable divorce, let us help you. Whether you're an attorney or you're navigating divorce on your own, subpoenas can uncover the truth, secure the evidence you need, and level the playing field. To see how we can help, book an appointment by visiting our website at onlysubpoenas.com.